"I'll give you my salary if you translate this," laughed the millionaire boss. But the cleaning lady silenced him. The elevator bell sounded like a sentence as the steel doors opened on the 23rd floor. The marble floor reflected the cold gleam of the lights, and the hallway smelled of expensive coffee and flowers that changed every Monday. At the end of the corridor, the Atlas conference room displayed a glass table with 12 chairs and a lit screen showing a report in English. The millionaire boss Renato Varela, in a blue suit that never wrinkled, laughed with the executives lined up like shelf items. "I'll give you my salary if you translate this, ma'am. What's your name again?" he said, pointing to the cleaning cart parked 2 steps from the door. She breathed. "Lucia." In that environment, she had no last name, just calloused hands, a bucket, gloves, and a scratched wristwatch that was always 5 minutes fast, the trick she'd learned so she'd never miss the bus. She also had a ritual. Before starting any room, she folded the floor cloth in 4, ran her fingers along the seam, and whispered softly, almost a secret, "Go out and come back clean." At the end of her shift, she repeated the same words and put the cloth in her bag like someone pocketing a piece of dignity. "Lucia," Renato repeated, stretching the syllable as if savoring an expensive candy. "No one understands this, not even our legal team. Representations and warranties, indemnification, non-solicitation, words that decide millions. You, who mop floors, are going to explain why we should sign? I'll give you my salary for the month if you translate this in front of everyone." Laughter. The foreign consultant, a white-haired man, watched in silence. The executives avoided looking at Lucia out of embarrassment or fear of their own cowardice. Lucia set down the bucket, straightened her back, and wiped her fingers on her apron. In the cart between disinfectant and scouring powder, there was a crumpled brown envelope. Inside, resumes printed to hand out during her lunch break. One of them was her son's, Davi, 19, who dreamed of a trainee slot in IT. His course tuition had come due on Friday. The bill slept in the drawer with the same restlessness as the empty fridge. She had no time, money, or luxury for humiliations, but she had anger, and anger, if it finds no exit, finds a voice. "I don't want your salary," she said. "I want respect." The room grew uncomfortable, as if someone had opened a window on a windy day. Renato smiled without his eyes. "Respect is earned, so impress me." He tapped the mouse twice. The screen displayed an underlined passage. "Hold harmless and indemnify the buyer against any and all claims arising from prior undisclosed liabilities. Translate it, please, Ms. Lucia, and explain it." She approached the screen. English had been hers secretly since lunchtime, when she watched videos on her phone with a broken earbud and a battered dictionary a retired teacher neighbor had lent her. "Hold harmless and indemnify the buyer against any claims from previously undisclosed liabilities," she said steadily. "It means if a hidden bill shows up, the seller foots the bill. You." One of the executives cleared his throat. Renato clapped slowly. "Cute. Did you rehearse?" She didn't answer. Her hand trembled a little, not from fear but from memory. The hand that scrubbed the hospital floor when her husband was admitted struggling to breathe, and she learned from emergency signs in English and Portuguese the difference between exit and saída. "Please continue," the white-haired consultant urged in halting Portuguese. "The non-solicitation part. A clause that prevents whoever signs from inviting over the other party's employees and clients for a while," Lucia said. "If you sign as is, you won't be able to hire key people from the smaller company for 24 months, and you won't be able to talk to their clients, even if you need to keep services running." The room shifted in their seats. Renato leaned forward, now without irony. "And why would that be bad for us?" Lucia drew a breath, searching the faces for some shred of humanity willing to hear her without turning it into a spectacle. "Because you haven't mapped the other party's clients from what I see here." She pointed to the footer of the slide, where a tiny line read, "Annex 2, Client List, to be provided post-signature. You'll sign without knowing whom you can't speak to, and there's a gotcha in the timing. It starts from closing, not the effective date. They can drag out the closing, and you're stuck longer." This time the silence wasn't mockery, it was calculation. The young in-house lawyer started flipping through a folder. The sales director straightened his tie. Someone whispered, "Is she right?" Renato leaned back, tapping his Mont Blanc on the table, a tick the whole team knew. Then he resumed the challenging tone of someone who refuses to give up the scene. "All right, tell me then, Ms. Lucia, would you sign?" She looked him in the eye. She saw a handsome, well-groomed man, but with dark circles no concealer could hide. Not a soap opera villain, just someone unaccustomed to being contradicted. I wouldn't sign without a minimal list for Annex 2, without reducing the non-solicitation to 6 months, and without removing the part about not speaking to clients. That could become abuse of dominant position. Abuse? He repeated, blowing the word like ash. When the big used the contract to choke the small, she explained. That's how we lost my neighborhood. A water contract with penalties nobody understood. She didn't notice that in saying it, she dipped her face a little, as if confessing something intimate. The foreign consultant noticed, tilting his head with respect. Renato set the pen on the table. I'll give you my salary if you translate the whole thing right now and find 3 more gotchas. The laughter returned, smaller, uncertain. Someone pressed the AC button. A cold draft sliced through the room. Lucia slipped a hand into her apron pocket and felt the floor cloth folded in 4, her talisman. She thought of Davi, the bill, a sack with rice, beans and eggs. She thought about the price of swallowing that kind of laugh. I don't want your money, she said, the words lower but sharp. I want you to stop laughing at the people who clean the floor you walk on. The question hovered in the air like a blade. How far should someone go to be respected? Accept the bet and turn humiliation into currency, or refuse and risk remaining invisible? Outside, the corridor was empty. Inside, the digital clock ticked from 8:59 to 9. The consultant cleared his throat. Renato lifted a hand to quiet the murmurs. Then prove it. No salary, no bet, just proof. The micro jolt came with a soft sound. Tap. The Mont Blanc slipped from his hand and hit the glass, leaving a blot of ink on the tabletop like a comma, thicker than grammar allows. Lucia saw the stain and understood that comma, right then, divided 2 worlds. Before, when she cleaned without being seen, and now when someone had called her to read what held millions. I'll prove it, she said, placing the brown envelope on the conference table among reports and profits, like setting a simple dish amid fine china. Lucia's world had been collapsing quietly, like a wall peeling behind a wardrobe. She lived with her son in a 2-room apartment at the end of the bus line. The building's paint was faded, and the kind doorman looked the other way when she came back with donated groceries. Every morning began at 4:45, coffee strained in the cloth inherited from her mother, 2 slices of day-old bread warmed in a skillet, and a prayer that wasn't exactly prayer, but a pact. Go out and come back clean, folding the cloth in 4, feeling the seam, putting it away, gestures that reminded her who she was before someone broke things inside. Davy's father disappeared when the boy was 3, after promising he would figure it out. He never did. Lucia did. 3 jobs, a half-finished hospitality course, the drive to learn English during lunch because once a hotel guest handed her a tip saying, "For your kindness," and she kept the phrase like a key without knowing which door it would open. The first door was a steady job at Renato Varella's company, cleaning alternating floors. What looked like stability was really a tightrope over a valley. One misstep, and the bills came like rocks. The 5:25 a.m. bus was always packed. Lucia knew people by their shoes, the girl with white sneakers and pink laces, the gentleman with brown pointy shoes who read the paper, creasing the corner with his nail, the bakery worker who always gave his seat to pregnant women, the counter clerk who slept upright, forehead to the glass. Some days the buses ran late, and the metal aisle turned into a confessional. People talked about the price of cooking gas, the child who failed an exam, the illness that returned. Lucia listened, not out of curiosity, out of survival. She learned from others' falls how to fall more quietly. Her neighborhood, a mosaic of row houses, had its codes. The neighbor in 204 knocked 3 times on the wall when she needed sugar. The kid in 301 sold popsicles in summer and apologized when he didn't have change. The pastor on the corner greeted everyone, even those who didn't go to church. On Sundays, a man pushed a cart selling tamales with a squeak that sounded like prayer. Sometimes Lucia bought one on impulse, like buying a memory. Her husband Celso lived in those sweet things. He had huge hands, and when in a good mood, he took the pot and said, "Food is a hug we chew." In the last months before he vanished, his laugh thinned and his step shortened. The world squeezed his chest, and when it let go, he didn't come back. She remembered one day with knife-edge clarity, a fine drizzle. Celso, wet in the kitchen, tried to fix the faucet that wouldn't stop dripping. "Just tighten it a bit more," he said, and the faucet snapped for good. Lucia mopped the floor with the cloth folded in 4 and thought some titans break. They don't fix. That night Celso said, "I'll figure it out," and went out to look for work. She waited for the key in the door until the birds began. The key never returned. The floor cloth became a charm not from superstition but stubbornness. If she repeated the gesture, maybe life would learn to stay in one piece. At the company building, the world smelled different. Pricey detergent, new carpet, fresh ground coffee, subscription flowers. The security guards knew Lucia by her punctual greeting. Managers knew her by her silence. She read the building through what was left behind. Lipstick-marked cups, napkins with numbers scrawled on them, forgotten reports that revealed more by what they didn't say. If a boss walked too fast, something off script had happened. If the break room woke to a pile of cups, the meeting had stretched into the night. Her neighborhood also told stories. Donna Dalva, the retired teacher from 102, had lent Lucia an English-Portuguese dictionary with a peeling cover and that good, musty smell. "Give it back when the world gives you back your respect," she joked, and Lucia laughed to keep from crying. With that dictionary, she learned that hold could mean hold, keep, contain, and that harmless looked innocent, but hid a world of shifted blame. She learned too, watching videos with captions and sometimes without, that pronunciation comes after courage. At the bus window, she practiced warranties in whispers, like prayer. On the way to work, the route past a vacant lot turned into a parking lot. There, a tall wall kept an old painting of a woman washing the floor, headscarf on. The anonymous artist signed R and painted a note below. "Those who clean see what the rest pretend not to see." Every time the bus slowed, Lucia scooped that phrase like water in cupped hands. It was reminder and armor. That week, the building manager at home posted a notice in the elevator. Extraordinary contribution to replace the water tank. $280 per unit, due by the 10th. The number stuck in Lucia's head like the price of a choice. Her $280 was cooking gas, Davy's notebook, the clinic appointment the health center couldn't fit. Davy suggested selling the TV. "I'm not selling our window," she said, half joking, half defending herself. The TV had become their window with a remote. When the world pressed too hard, you turned it off. Even so, at the start of that week, Lucia fed inadvertently the fantasy of a lighter day. She imagined a less crowded bus, a supervisor with a soft voice, a respectful meeting where the carpet pile absorbed only footsteps, not humiliations, and precisely then, reality elbowed in. When the laughter came in the Atlas room, she already had a complete inventory of small losses and small stubbornnesses. The laugh hit all of it and sounded like a plate shattering. At night, when the day asked for calm, she adjusted the tattered throw on the sofa, propped her feet on a stool and closed her eyes. Memory fetched Celso again, but with a different frame. She remembered him repeating English words from a borrowed microwave manual. "Start, stop, menu." He laughed at his own accent. "Menu meu nu." They laughed together, and little Davy chimed in, "Meu nu nu." It was a good, clean laugh. Now in the 23rd floor room, someone had dirtied that memory by laughing at her effort. And effort, Lucia knew, is not for laughing at, it's for accompanying. The catalyst came as a printed email forgotten under the 23rd floor break room coffee machine. Lucia didn't make a habit of reading others' papers, but this one was coffee-stained and didn't show a clear recipient. It was just a lone sheet with the header, "Subject, Urgent. Buyer requests adjustments to Schedule B." The title drew attention less for the English and more for the word urgent, which in companies means someone will spill the hurry onto whoever's nearest. She folded the cloth in four, set the bucket in the corner, and before tossing the sheet, noticed 3 items underlined in pen. Carve out for existing clients under 10K MRR. Shorten non-solicit to 6 months. Indemnity cap at 15% of purchase price. Next to it, in rushed handwriting, someone had scribbled, "Renato won't accept cap. Keep quiet about clients." The ink was fresh. In the footer, a partly smudged but legible name, Marcella, M&A Counsel. Micro-revelation. Someone in legal had already tried to defend what Lucia suggested in the room. Someone silenced by strategy or vanity. She slipped the sheet into the brown envelope as carefully as one tucks away an old photo, not out of gossip, but survival instinct. If they tried to ram an unfair contract down the small firm's throat, she'd know where to press so air could get in. That afternoon, the supervisor said they were short-staffed and asked Lucia to give a quick once-over in the Atlas room minutes before the final signing meeting. "And don't hang around when the big folks get here," she warned. "They think you eavesdrop." Lucia nodded without mentioning the little red light on the mic. She did her rounds in silence, dusted frames, straightened chairs, cleaned the ink stain the Mont Blanc had left, an irony that pricked. As she wiped the glass, she saw in the reflection the foreign consultant gesturing in the hallway with a young man she'd never seen, visitor badge and laptop backpack. From the accent that slipped through the cracked door, she recognized a blend. He spoke halting Portuguese like someone who learned on the streets. Minutes later, the room filled. Renato arrived late and immediately asked about closing. The microphone lit up. From the break room doorway, Lucia could see a perfect triangle through the crack. The screen, Renato, and the red light. She raised the paper cup to her lips without drinking. The consultant moved briskly through topics until Renato, impatient, asked about undisclosed liabilities. The answer was technical, the pressure visible. "We're signing," Renato decreed when the objections began to knot the table. "We'll adjust by side letter later." The expression side letter, a parallel letter that silently changes the main contract, ran through Lucia like a shiver, not because she knew the legal details, but because she recognized in the parallel what always crushes the lowly, whatever exists outside the light. She pivoted on her heels, and without planning to, stepped into the room. She set the brown envelope on the table. "Excuse me," she said. "This was left in the break room." True, but also an invitation. Renato arched an eyebrow. "Thank you, Ms. Lucia. Anything else?" She shifted her weight, looked to the consultant, then at the red light, just to clean the ink stain that was left. The consultant lowered his gaze to the delicate mark on the glass. Nearly gone. "Before we sign," the foreign man said, staring at Renato, "I want to hear your legal team, especially Ms. Marcella." The line was a stone tossed in a lake, and the ripples smacked the face of an executive who pretended to search his phone. "Marcella is in another meeting," someone said, but she sent comments. Lucia didn't say the comments were in the envelope. She didn't need to. The consultant asked to show them. The young visitor with the badge stood and gently asked, "May I?" He took the envelope, removed the sheet, and put it on the screen through his laptop camera. The notes appeared giant. "Renato won't accept cap," trembling at the center. This time, the silence was shame. Renato cleared his throat. "Preliminary remarks, nothing binding." The consultant set both palms on the table. "In my culture, keeping quiet about clients is hiding material information." The word material thickened the air. The young visitor then sliced the polished fabric of the scene. "I worked for the small company. I know they have clients you want." Everyone looked at him. "I'm here as the consultant's guest. I'm not breaching anything, but I do have a name. Davi Luz." Lucia felt a jolt that hurt inside. Davi, her Davi. Her heart raced, and for a second she feared her own pride. The young man smiled slightly, like asking permission before nudging fate. "I'm not your Davi," he said kindly, as if he could guess the confusion born on her face. "But my name is Davi too, son of people like you. I came to learn, and if I learned anything, it's that keeping quiet is like a gas leak. When it explodes, it doesn't choose who it hits." The improbable scene kindled a new courage in Lucia. "I learned something too," she said. "A contract that can't be read by the person who cleans the room where it's signed is not a good contract." The consultant nodded. Pressed, Renato tried to take back control. "Let's pause. No audience." The red light stayed on. Just then, Lucia, without raising her voice, aimed at the precise spot. "If you won't accept an indemnity cap and want silence about clients, it's because you plan to use the contract to squeeze the smaller party. You can sign, but the recording is catching what we can all see." Renato's pen stopped tapping. He searched the glass lake for a way out, didn't find one, and he laughed. Short, tired, a laugh without an audience. The first win was small but concrete. The consultant suspended the signing, demanding Marcella's presence and an immediate review of 3 clauses. Renato agreed reluctantly, limiting non-solicitation to 6 months and accepting a 15% indemnity cap, measures that altered risk in spreadsheets and moods in hallways. The crowd dispersed, phone calls multiplied. The win came with a price. When the meeting ended, the supervisor yanked Lucia by the arm in the break room. "Are you crazy walking into the room in the middle of a closing? Do you want to get fired?" Lucia swallowed. "I just returned a forgotten paper." The supervisor wasn't cruel. She was trained to survive by stepping on her own words. "Renato asked your name. He wants you transferred to the 3rd floor, freight area. No pretty glass, no big screen, just storage." Transfer in that language meant demotion. She signed the internal memo with cold hands. The ballpoint faltered twice, like it refused to be an instrument of injustice. Lucia looked at the uneven ink and wanted to keep that crooked signature like a portrait of how she felt. Powerless. Davy flashed in her mind like a beacon. Plans, coursework, trainee. The bill burned her pocket. On the way home, crammed bus, Lucia got a text from an unknown number. "This is Marcella from Legal. Thank you for not letting us get swallowed. Can I call you?" She read it 3 times, not believing someone from the top would climb down to her step. She said yes. The call came with a tired, honest voice. "I wrote those notes. I didn't have the strength to put them on the table. You did. I just said what I saw," Lucia replied. "I don't want trouble. You already have it. With that transfer." I heard. A pause. "If you want, I can recommend your son to a partner consultancy, but I don't want it to feel like a trade. I want it to be fair." Lucia stayed quiet for a long time. She didn't want alms. She wanted a path. "He deserves it on his own merit," she said, "but thank you for the bridge." At home, the nightly ritual came like medicine. Wash the cloth, fold it, go and come back clean. Davy listened with bright eyes and a furrowed brow. "They demoted you. That can't stand, Mom." The line cut and hugged at once. "I'm still in the game," she said, mimicking a phrase she'd heard in executive hallways. They laughed together. The next morning, on the 3rd floor, the world was different. It smelled of grease and dusty boxes. The storage area had flickering lights and buckets marking leaks. The floor boss, Donna Paula, greeted Lucia with a gentleness that felt like resistance. "We help each other here," she said, offering better gloves. In the corner, atop a cabinet, sat an old radio playing old songs. The work was hard and dignified and utterly invisible. On her break, Lucia checked her phone, an email notification. It was from Marcella. "Attached is the revised draft with comments. I know you don't need to read it, but if you want, here it is." The attachment weighed like a rock in a shallow pocket. She opened it. The English words felt like familiar neighbors now. Cap, carve out, material. In the comment balloons, one note took her breath. Remove side letter. Consolidate everything in the main. Micro revelation. Marcella had chosen light. Courage from those with titles weighs differently. It costs bonuses, invites, chairs. The lawyer's gesture, documented, was proof. Lucia saved the file on her phone, even knowing that if asked, she'd have to delete it. In the afternoon, sweeping the darkest corner of storage, she found an old box with yellowed labels. Inside, stacks of training materials abandoned. Ethics and Compliance, 2016. She flipped through, dirtying her fingers, and found an underlined module. Moral harassment. Ridiculing, exposing, or humiliating someone in the workplace are prohibited behaviors. If you witness it, report it. In the footer, the hotline email, still active. Another micro-proof, this time printed by Time. The first win then took shape. Not just a better clause, but the arm the company forcibly extended to pull her from the pit. But the cost was calculated. Demotion, surveillance of her steps, looks that said you meddle where you weren't called. Pressure wasn't only at the glass table anymore, it was in the bare cement corridor, and she still needed to pay for gas. When the day ended, the supervisor appeared in storage with a short message. "Renato wants to see you tomorrow, 7:30, in his office." The news swept the room like a cold wind. Donna Paula squeezed Lucia's hand. "Bring what's yours," she said without explaining. Lucia understood. "Bring your dignity, your proofs, and your ritual." That night she rinsed the cloth at the sink, dried it carefully, and tucked it in her bag. She kissed Davy's forehead as he studied with headphones. "Go and come back clean," he echoed, teasing tenderly. "Go and come back fair," she corrected, and slept by effort, ready to lose sleep again. External pressure arrived before sunrise. On the 6 a.m., "Jesus," 2 employees joked loudly that janitorial runs the contract now. The laugh had metal in it. At the building, a security guard stopped her with unusual formality. "I need to search your bag." Knew before, they checked at random. She opened it without protest, showing the folded cloth, the notebook, the lunchbox. The guard pointed at the brown envelope. "What's this?" "My papers." He handled it with gloves and returned it without apologizing. When she turned away, her ears burned with shame. At 7:30, Renato's office was empty, with a view of the waking city. He walked in 2 minutes later, tie askew, cup in hand, Mont Blanc in his pocket. "Sit," he said, but remained standing, pacing. "You exposed me yesterday." "I returned a forgotten paper," she answered, because truth was the thread holding her up. You know it wasn't just that. He stared at her, and for the first time, something looked broken in his eyes. I have an offer. You go back to the 23rd, you get an extra day off each week, and this ends here. No hotline, no comments. In return, you sign this. He handed her a sheet. Lucia read slowly. It was an expanded confidentiality agreement. You agree not to report, comment on, or disclose any facts, events, or conduct observed in the exercise of your activities that might affect the company's reputation under penalty of termination for cause and civil liability. The word reputation gleamed like a blade. This forbids me from telling the truth, she asked. It protects the company, he corrected automatically, and it protects you. She set the sheet on the desk. You laughed at me in front of everyone. He breathed, tired. I laugh at everyone when I'm under pressure. The line came out too raw, and he realized, too late, he'd confessed more than he wanted. I didn't want to lose this deal. There are 100 families depending on it. And how many depend on the small company? He clenched his jaw. You don't understand the board. I understand flaws, she replied. And the flaw you covered with that contract is slippery. The door clicked softly. Marcella walked in. No makeup, hair tied back, badge hanging like armor. Excuse me, may I? Renato nodded, irritated. She didn't sit. I heard about the agreement. It's not appropriate. If it goes forward, I resign. He stared at her like watching a curtain catch fire. Have you lost your mind? No, she said firmly. I lost it yesterday when I saw side letter turn into a tactic. Marcella's presence changed the room's gravity. Lucia remembered the Ethics and Compliance 2016 box and decided to back out by stepping forward. I witnessed the laughter and the pressure. I have the email with your notes, ma'am. I also have a photo of the red light on during the meeting. Renato rubbed his temple. A notification buzzed on his phone. Extraordinary board meeting, 11 a.m. He read it, paled a shade, pocketed it. The board wants an extraordinary meeting today. The risk escalated on her way out. That same morning, back on the 3rd floor, an internal memo hit her inbox. Verbal warning recorded. Improper conduct entering a conference room without authorization. Next step, written warning. Below, a cold line. Temporary reduction of work hours. 6th day for 30 days. No salary impact. No salary impact on paper. In real life, fewer hours mean fewer overtime, less allowance, more breathlessness. 15 minutes later, the condo's finance office called again. About the extraordinary contribution due today. If not paid, water shut off tomorrow at 8. The word shut off cut through Lucia like a handleless knife. I need until Friday, she pleaded. Impossible. The phone grew heavy in her hand, and the hallway wall seemed to inch closer. In storage, Donna Paola found her on a bench, eyes fixed. What happened? Lucia held out her phone, showing the memo and the condo call. If they cut my water, Her voice snagged. Donna Paola took a breath, opened a drawer, pulled out an envelope. My emergency stash, 200, take it, pay me back when you can. Lucia wanted to refuse and couldn't. I'll pay you back. I know. That afternoon, another turn of the screw. HR called to align expectations. Lucia, the company values your work, but we need to preserve room hierarchy. The memo is just procedure. Procedures don't apologize, she said calmly. The analyst looked away. Sign the receipt, please. Before the board meeting, one more pinch. The doorman from her building sent a voice note. Ms. Lucia, the truck's outside. They came to check the tanks. The manager wants to know if you paid. They're marking apartments. Shame crawled up her neck. She typed, I'll handle it. And she went. The fall came dressed in formality. At 10:55, with Marcella's help, Lucia entered the Aurora room where the board met. The chairs were wider, the cups thinner, and the air hummed with AC units wrestling silence. Renato looked pale but composed. 4 board members wore different shades of skepticism. The short-haired chairwoman with rimless glasses, a thin, auditor-type man, a pragmatic operations woman, a 4th, younger, with a look that measured reputational damage with an invisible ruler. We'll begin, said the chair. Agenda, conduct in yesterday's meeting and due diligence in the acquisition process. Renato spoke first. There was pressure. There was an unfortunate colloquial tone. There was no intent to humiliate. The side letter strategy as usual, and He hesitated. I admit I pushed the timetable too hard. Usual doesn't mean right, the auditor cut in without raising his voice. Show internal precedent. Marcella asked to speak. She put the draft on the screen. Was legal's feedback being considered? It was, Renato answered. I request the minutes reflect that keep quiet about clients was scribbled as a tactical note, Marcella said, pointing at the screen, and I request full audio retrieval for the meeting. They called a technician. He plugged in a thumb drive. Play. Laughter filled the room. I'll give you my salary if you translate this, ma'am. What's your name again? The sound, out of body, was harsher. The operations member shifted in her chair, uncomfortable. Context, Renato tried. Later, the chair said coolly. Ms. Lucia, please. Lucia walked up with her heart in her heels. The mic smelled of clean metal. She didn't speechify. She described. I stepped in to return a paper. I saw the red light on. I heard side letter. I don't know internal politics. I know when a word wants to hide. Do you understand the contract terms? The younger member asked, temperate. Enough to recognize cap, carve-out, non-solicitation, and to know when someone's signing with their eyes closed. Did you feel afraid? The operations member asked. Yes. Of losing my job. Of losing water at home. Of teaching my son to accept humiliation as the norm. No water. The chair frowned. The building's extraordinary contribution. Due today. The room paused for a beat that didn't fit the script. The auditor resumed. Mr. Renato, did you attempt to impose an expanded confidentiality term on a cleaning employee? There was an offer of mutual reputational protection, he replied, defensive. Translation. Yes, the auditor wrote. Marcella raised a sheet. Warning memo issued today, 9:14 a.m. Improper conduct entering a meeting room without authorization during an internal investigation. Procedure, the young member tried to soften. A procedure that pressures a witness, the chair countered. Noted for the record. I'd like to speak, the foreign consultant said from the gallery. Granted, the chair nodded. I requested Lucia's presence as a witness. If there was pressure, it didn't come from me. And if I may, a side letter here would be hiding the sun with a sieve. Methodically, the auditor opened a rapid-fire block. Mr. Renato, was the client list attached? No. To be provided post-signature. Why? Negotiations in progress. Does that justify keeping quiet about clients? No. Ms. Marcella, your recommended cap was what? 15% of the price. Why? Proportional to mapped risk and market standard. Ms. Lucia, do you recommend signing? I recommend light, then signing. The young member, focused on damage, asked, who leaked to the press? Not me, Marcella said firmly. Nor me, said the consultant. Nor I, said Lucia. I don't know how to deal with reporters. I barely manage my neighborhood. The chair looked at Renato. He held her gaze. Nor I. The operations member asked for the floor. My proposal, suspend the signing, conduct a full review, and consolidate any adjustments in the main contract, not in a side letter. Second, open a conduct process regarding the employee incident. Third, temporarily remove Mr. Renato from negotiations. Votes, the chair called. 3 hands rose. The young member waited a second and raised his. Unanimous. Ms. Lucia, the chair said, a touch more human now. Do you accept immediate support from the social fund for the water situation? Lucia hesitated. I don't want charity. I want a path. Support isn't charity, Marcella said, gentle but firm. And an open path needs people standing. I'll accept as a loan, Lucia conceded, head high. The chair nodded. So recorded. Treasury will arrange it today. Renato asked to speak. I got the tone wrong, the method wrong. There's his voice snagged. I want to set it right. Start by not laughing at the step you're standing on, Lucia said without rudeness. The auditor closed his folder. We're adjourned. Next session, text review, in plain language. In the hallway, Marcella touched Lucia's arm. Breathe. Now comes the auditorium. It'll hurt, and it'll heal. The auditorium had 60 seats, a new carpet smell, and a screen ready for slips. Title, Contracts in Plain Language, Commitments and Learnings. Employees from different floors, curious, critical, tired, filled the rows. Renato, officially removed, sat in the 3rd row without a tie. The conduct committee wanted a public talk to trade corridor shame for commitment in the light. Lucia climbed the stage with legs that remembered packed buses. The mic felt heavy at first, then steady. The ritual wouldn't fit out here. The cloth stayed in her bag, but it fit inside. Go and come back clean, she mouthed. I didn't come to teach English or law. I came to remind you that cleaning isn't erasing tracks. It's revealing the path, she said. The auditorium answered with a murmur of assent and doubt. Marcella projected 2 versions of the same clause. In legalese, 64 words. In plain language, 23. Engineering folks frowned, salespeople smiled, legal nodded along. Why didn't we do this from the start? Someone asked without a mic. Because we confuse complexity with importance, Marcella replied. A man in the back raised his hand. With respect, it's not janitorial's role to set the board's agenda. A wave of ooh swept the room. Lucia touched the lectern with her fingertips. It's not a contract's role to teach us to laugh at people either. But it did. Today, we unlearn. Half the room applauded. The other half fiddled with their phones, defensive. An HR analyst stood. Who guarantees this isn't crisis theater? Facts do, the board chair answered from the back. We'll publish accessible summaries of relevant contracts, redo ethics training, create a listening channel with representatives from cleaning, security, and maintenance, and we'll measure whether management understands what they sign. A sales manager asked for the mic, and when a big client demands a side letter, we explain why not, the foreign consultant said, stepping onto the stage without ceremony. And if they insist, we choose our clients. Choosing clients is a luxury, someone shot back. No, it's strategy that prevents expensive shame later, he finished. Renato rose slowly. The air thickened. He held the mic like something slippery. I was arrogant. I laughed. I belittled. And I tried to push an unfair contract. I apologized to Lucia, the team, and he drew breath. The little guys. A mixed chorus answered, Good. About time. We'll see. Public apologies are a minefield. One wrong step, and it's performance. So Lucia anchored the scene. Apologies don't pay bills, but they open doors. I want two concrete things: for the small company to come here tomorrow to read the draft with us, and for the confidentiality term they gave me to be shelved for good. Marcella noted it in full view. The chair confirmed with a small gesture. A notification rippled across the room. Boss humiliates worker with salary bet in recorded meeting. Company suspends acquisition. The screen nearly turned into a gossip mirror. Marcella shut it off. Let's not turn learning into spectacle. But fear of media lynching filled the empty seats. An analyst whispered, They'll come for us. A manager answered, Let them, for the right reasons. An intern filmed from the side. Another warned, No recording, folks. The company's mental noise surfaced. What if my face leaks? What if it's my area in the headline? What if the competition uses it? The chair took the stage. The answer isn't hiding, it's doing the work. Facts, not phrases. A maintenance worker stood, voice carrying the smell of cleaning products. I've cleaned the 7th floor for 8 years. Today's the first time I understood a clause. Thank you. The auditorium applauded without hesitation. A guy from IT, Cap Dark Circles from night maintenance, ventured, What if someone laughs again tomorrow? We point to the red light and remember what we're signing now, Lucia said. In the back, Davy leaned against the wall, simple shirt, asked to speak. I learned English hearing my mom repeat phrases without knowing the translation. I learned not to laugh at people's mistakes. And I learned today that contracts aren't just for lawyers, they're for people. I want to work here, not because there's a scholarship now, but because now there's courage. The applause had a different temperature. Less noise, more agreement. It was the good kind of shame, the kind that puts things in order. Lucia took a breath. The pause was right. If this moved you, drop a respect in the comments, not for me. So you remember tomorrow when Hurry tries to run you over. The CTA didn't sound like marketing. It sounded like a folded note in your pocket. A soft laugh ran through the room. The good kind, the one that eases without belittling. Renato, third row, lowered his head. The consultant touched his shoulder. Marcella closed with a clear line. Commitments made. Tomorrow, read through with the small company. Next week, publish the summaries. In 30 days, plain language training launches. The auditorium stood like people leaving an unexpected service, skeptical, touched, with work to do in their hands. Resolution didn't come with fanfare, but with small sounds. The email confirming Davy's interview. Welcome, intern. The metallic click of the storage door when she returned to the 3rd floor by choice. I want to stay where they remind me no one's invisible. The printer spitting out the first plain language contract summary. The company posted online with a frequently asked questions box written in Portuguese that actually read like conversation. 2 days later, the small company came to the building. 4 people, simple clothes and worn folders. They sat in a room without glass, coffee served in plastic cups, and read the revised draft together. Carve out for existing clients. 6-month non-solicitation. 15% cap. Lucia didn't go in. She waited in the hallway, cloth in her pocket. waiting for the sign that the words now fit in the mouths of those who would have to chew them. When the door opened, the small company's director, a sun-leathered man, shook Marcella's hand. "Now I can sign without fear." Renato returned from his removal with less shine and more pauses. He didn't bring the Mont Blanc. Instead, he appeared with a black-covered notebook. One morning he crossed paths with Lucia in the elevator. "Good morning, Miss Lucia." It was the first time he said Ms. without irony. "Good morning, Mr. Renato." The elevator dropped 3 floors in a silence that wasn't hostile anymore, just silence. When the doors opened, he hesitated. "I forgot to say thank you." She nodded, not turning the scene into a medal. "Go and come back clean," she told herself, and stepped out. The Pano Vivo program took shape the following month. List of those admitted, a welcome meeting, an English teacher with dry humor and a soft voice, and a borrowed room on the 7th floor where, at night, you could see people in maintenance uniforms repeating, "How are you?" between laughs that were now conspiratorial. Lucia enrolled too, not as a main student, but as a partner. She grabbed the keys, turned on the projector, put materials away. In the second class, the teacher asked why the program name. Davy, front row hungry intern, answered before his mum, "Because a good cloth doesn't erase, a good cloth reveals." One Saturday afternoon, Lucia took Davy to a free exhibit at the city's cultural center. On the wall, a huge photograph showed a woman's hand holding a damp floor cloth, folded in 4, against the shine of an old floor. The caption read, "Rituals, what saves us when no one's watching." Davy snapped a picture of his mother looking at the picture. The image caught what doesn't fit in reports, persistence with a backbone. There was no happy ending for Renato, but there was a path. He lost his bonus, did remedial training, and spent a semester mentoring in the Pano Vivo program. Some thought he was fake, others saw effort. He didn't unlearn being a boss, but he learned to be less owner of the room and more owner of the pauses. The board watched him with a small magnifier, annoying and good. The company, like any big body, stumbled and carried on. As for the line, "I'll give you my salary," it didn't become an inside joke. It became an uncomfortable memory, cited in training as an example of what not to do. One day in class, the teacher asked, "Translate hold harmless." A maintenance lady raised her hand. "Hold harmless," she said, with an accent and pride. "It's hard to say," the teacher noted, "but we learned to say it because we learned first how to listen." On the last day of the month, Lucia paid the building's extraordinary contribution and bought 2 kilos of rice, 1 of beans, and a tray of eggs. In line, a woman cut in front of her. She breathed and didn't argue. There were bigger, fairer fights in the world. At home, she set the bags down in the kitchen, took the cloth from her bag, and left it to soak. Davy, sprawled on the couch, studied English on his phone without earbuds, whispering phrases. Non-solicitation. 6 months. Carve-out. She laughed. "Is that an addiction, kid?" "It's a ritual," he said. "Go and come back clean." On Monday before dawn, Lucia woke with the jitter that always comes when life changes place. She made coffee, packed her lunch, folded the cloth. She kissed Davy's forehead and left before the sun. On the bus, she leaned her head against the cold window, watched the city wake, and thought dignity has its own language. Sometimes English, sometimes silence, always gesture. She stepped into the building and greeted the doorman by name. She rode up to the 3rd, turned on the lights, checked the buckets, arranged the brushes. Before starting, she stopped. She took a notebook from her pocket and wrote on the first blank page, without frills and without error, "When they hand you a contract that makes you small, fold the cloth, clean, until you see what's yours." She put the notebook away and walked into the first room of the day. She no longer needed an audience, a bet, or revenge. What she needed now was to repeat what works until it becomes structure. And what works, she knew, isn't shouting to the world that you're right. It's making the world hear what's always been here. She set the cloth on the floor and started with the corner, as always, because that's where dirt learns to hide. At the end of her shift, before going home, she passed by the Atlas room, empty, screen off, chairs aligned. She placed her hand on the glass table where the Mont Blanc had left its stain and smiled faintly. The glass was clean, but not invisible. The reflection showed a face that owed nothing to anyone. She folded the cloth one last time that day, tucked it into her bag and whispered, "Go and come back clean." And as part of the ritual transformed, she added, "Go and come back fair."